Hello everyone, I'm Qian. Today I'm presenting a talk on modality and depth in touchless smartphone augmented reality interactions. Touchless interactions, such as hand tracking or dwell, can be intuitive, entertaining, and immersive to use. These interactions are emerging on augmented and virtual reality environments as supplementations to traditional joystick or touchscreen. In practice, interaction distances or depths can affect touchless interactions. For head-mounted displays, or HMDs, both the effect of modality and distance is well studied, but this is not the case for smartphones. Why do we explore touchless interactions on smartphones? As AR platforms, smartphones have much larger user base than HMDs, thus exploring the effect of modality and distance could potentially benefit more users. Smartphone touchless interactions can be useful when a person is cooking, or when a person is wearing a glove in harsh or soiled environments that makes touch interactions difficult or unsanitized to perform. Furthermore, dual interactions on smartphones can also enable one-handed interaction, which can be useful in AR interactions. In this paper, we want to understand the effect of touchless modality and interaction distance on smartphones and explore these three hypotheses. We hypothesize that users would prefer dual interactions over hand interactions. Users would prefer close range over distant interactions. The overall cognitive load would be higher for close range interactions. For detailed rationale behind these hypotheses, please refer to our paper. We built an AR application with iOS ARKit and implemented dual and hand tracking. The dual interaction uses ARKit's localization to find where the phone is pointing at, and the user can aim at different virtual objects with a dot-like crosshair. When the user holds the phone still, a progress wheel rotates to complete. For hand tracking, we 3D printed 3 color markers to fit the index finger and the thumb to support an OpenCV-based color tracking. We removed objects with similar colors in the lab to avoid tracking issues. Here are 2 example videos with our system. The left one demonstrates using hand tracking to press on virtual pin buttons. The sphere on the index finger indicates where the finger is. On the right, it's a video demonstrate the dual interaction to press pin buttons. For hand tracking, a user can move their index finger over the virtual element, and the element will change to a highlighted color. When the user pinches, it is considered selected. If the target is a button, the selection will automatically debounce. If the target is a slider, while selected user can move the object to perform translation, and release fingers can deselect the object. For screen dwell, once the cursor aims at the virtual object, a progress wheel starts to refill. Once filled, it is considered selected. If the target virtual object is a button, it will automatically debounce. But when the object is a slider, the object will remain selected and move to where the cursor points to in real time. Once the smartphone becomes still again, the progress wheel will refill. Once it's filled again, it is considered deselect. We designed a 2x2 study to understand the effect of interaction distance and modality. Here, we test interaction in a close range where objects are within reach, and in a distance where interaction happens at about 2.4 meters. We recruited 15 participants with average age around 29 years old, and the study was on average for 42 minutes. Most of the participants have prior AR application experiences, and when asked about familiarity with the concept of dual interaction, all of them seem to understand the concept right away, but this is not the case for hand tracking. We designed our task to reflect real-life scenarios to get participants into the everyday mindset of using the touchless interaction. The 2 tasks here are pin code task and the TV task, shown on the two figures on the right. In the pin code task, a user needs to perform 4 selection tasks or subtasks to match a randomly generated password to unlock a virtual painting. In the TV task, the user was asked to perform 2 selection subtasks and 4 scrubbing subtasks to seek for specific moments in the video based on the experimenter's comments, which is demonstrated in the right picture here. We collected all of these data and ran them through a multi-level mixed effect linear model. And we found that distant interactions are significantly faster than close-range ones. Specifically, screen dwell is significantly faster than hand tracking. No interaction were found between modality and distance. Also, we didn't find any significant effects on the task ordering. So here we revisit our 3 hypotheses. We hypothesized that the overall cognitive load would be higher for close-range interactions, but we found that the overall cognitive load was not higher for close-range completion time. However, we found a significant correlation between overall completion time and the task load. The higher the completion time, the higher the overall cognitive load for participants. The figure on the right shows all the subcategories of a NASA TLX. NASA TLX is a commonly used score rating to measure cognitive load. We used their raw scores from 0 to 100 to measure effort, frustration, mental demand, performance, physical, and temporal demand. If we look at hand tracking only, we notice that the distant hand tracking is in general less frustrating, less mental demanding, less temporal demand, and also less performance rating. We do not see similar effect for screen dwell, where distant and close range interactions have similar cognitive ratings for all the subcategories. We also hypothesized that users would prefer dwell interactions over hand gestures, and found that participants strongly prefer screen dwell over hand tracking. One possibility could be that the familiarity plays a part in this, as almost all participants were familiar with the concept of screen dwell, but only 17% were for hand tracking. We also noticed that hand tracking was not natural for some participants, as they exhibit different pinch gesture than what the system can recognize. Despite the low preference, hand tracking is still considered by some participants to be cool, futuristic, natural, and fun to use. We further hypothesized that users would prefer close range over distant interactions, but the findings were reversed. This is a bit unexpected since AR contents are often situated and meant to be treated like real objects, and we interact with real objects in a close range manner. Participants mentioned that they felt constrained in hand tracking because their hands need to be in the smartphone's view all the time, as shown on the upper right figure here, where user's hand becomes not visible on the screen if moved too far away to the right side of the smartphone. And for some people, a natural forward pinch was engaged in hand tracking, but this results in the thumb occludes the index finger to the camera's perspective, resulting in issues with hand tracking. We also noticed that some depth finding issues can lead to timeouts in close-range hand tracking. In general, from the system design perspective, it is better to inform that users what gestures should be used in the beginning. Prior work already showed that users have good learnability to gestures and can stick to those gestures once learned. We further suggest that components requiring higher performance, such as UI controls, should be considered for distant interactions. Lastly, on the ergonomic side, both hand tracking and screen dwell has their shortcomings. Participants mentioned arm sorenesses in both dwell and hand tracking situations. For hand tracking, a brief arm relaxation can reduce the soreness. As for screen dwell, use both hands to hold the phone almost eliminated further soreness. I would like to mention a few limitations we have. Firstly, this study was framed in a context of pure touchless interaction and not focusing on the difference or similarities between a touch-based interaction and a touchless interaction. We further, the 3D translation and rotations were also not evaluated, but could be part of the future work. The long-term benefits or issues of touchless interactions were also not within the scope of this paper. So here's a takeaway. We did a study to understand the effect of interaction distances on hand tracking and dwell in a smartphone context. We find that overall distant interactions are faster, more preferred than the close-range interactions. But for hand tracking, participants mentioned the close range can be found to use futuristic and immersive. When designing for AR applications, designers can consider distant interactions for UI components or other interaction components that performance is higher priority. And in a fixed interaction distance, the two modalities could be interchangeable without extra cognitive cost. Thank you for your time, and that concludes my talk. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you. Bye-bye.